I know you've been chopping at the bit. Anybody who is a hardcore fan of Cigs Inside understands what game week previews are to this program, how seriously Brad takes it, and the type of history he delivers for the listeners. And so, Brad, I hand the reins to you.
Keezer usually drives the bus, but here I go. When I get the reins, it's always game preview. Game recaps, he gets it back, but game previews are kind of my thing. And I'm a big college football historian, so I really like to get into, Old Dominion and like what they're all about, not just like from a football sense, but also just from a, what are they all about? I want to know as much about Old Dominion as possible. I want to be as locked in on this team as I can be. Obviously, I did a full-on scouting report of the team. I know what they look like. But first, I want to just talk about Old Dominion. Located in Norfolk, Virginia. They're a Sun Belt team. They're picked to finish 5th in the East by the media at Media Days this year, and they're picked 3rd in the East by Phil Steele. Phil Steele's on them a little bit more so than the rest of the curve, and I'll tell you why, because I actually think they're going to be a lot better. Just a little quick preview. This is going to be Ricky Raines' 6th year, and this is probably going to be the best team that he's had since he's taken over the job in 2020. And yeah, they're very excited about what they're looking for this upcoming year. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit. But first, about Old Dominion. When I first read this, I was like, why are they called Old Dominion? And I looked it up, and the nickname dates back to the 1600s when King Charles II of England referred to Virginia as his Old Dominion because of the colony, reminding him remained loyal to the English crown during the English Civil War. That's kind of lame, honestly, the fact that Virginia did that. If you want to get to the nitty gritty of it, like screw them. But so they're just they're honing in a tradition, and the fact, I guess they're just they're, what do you call the what was the word for the English what was the word for the English like loyalists? The loyalists, right? Yeah. I knew it. I knew my history about it. Great job, Miss. All my history teachers. Great job in elementary school. Shout out to them. But yeah, some I like going into key alumni as well. There's some good ones, some fun ones. Justin Verlander. We all know Taylor Heineke. He's kind of like the big football name from Old Dominion. But yeah, they have him, Justin Verlander, Kent Bazemore, longtime NBA player, I guess. Yeah, Atlanta Hawk, Golden State Warrior, Laker. Go Lakers, Lake Show. There we go. And then I found a fun one. Ben Bailey, host of the Cash Cab. How about that? That's a fun one. You ever seen Cash Cab?
No, I can't say I have.
You've never seen Cash Cab? It's a show where it's a reality show where there's a guy in a cab, right? And he goes around New York and he picks up random people, and then boom, they're on a game show, and it's Cash Cab. It's like a trivia game. It's really fun.
Oh wait, no, I've definitely seen that. That guy's from ODU. That's a win.
Yeah,
they're back to even.
Yeah, so I thought it was super cool that they have that. They have the Cash Cab guy.
King Charles thing brings them down one, but then Cash Cow thing brings them back up one.
But he brought his Cash Cab, which is super American and like one of the best things we've come out with. So I guess it evens out. Sort of, I guess.
Kind of. I don't know. Maybe a half point. Maybe they get a half point back.
USA. Okay, so I'm going to go back into kind of before we hop into this year's Old Dominion team. I want to talk about Old Dominion's kind of history as a program. This is their first ever meeting with Indiana, and they started football back in 1930, and they played for about 11 seasons, and then they canceled football. They just canceled it. It was over. 1940. They didn't bring it back all the way up until 2009.
Well,
2009. Wow, crazy. And they started at the FCS level, and they basically started winning right away under Bobby Wilder, who was their first ever head coach. I'll call, I guess, is second head coach, I guess, technically, but like their first ever head coach, Bobby Wilder. And they started winning right away, 9-2, 8-3. And then in their second or third recruiting class, they brought in this young, scrappy quarterback by the name of Taylor Heineke. And then in his sophomore season, they go all the way. They win their conference, and they go all the way to the Division I quarterfinals, where they eventually lost to Georgia Southern. Absolutely brutal for them. I believe North Dakota State probably won it all that year, but decent run for them at the FCS ranks, and helped them make their transition all the way up to the FBS level, which was Taylor Heineke's senior season. He's a big catalyst as to why they are where they are right now. And the success of Bobby Wilder and the success of Taylor Heineke is a big reason why they were able to make that jump to the FBS level. Since then, once they made that jump, they had, they went 6-6, 5-7. Third year, they were able to win the Conference USA outright and win the Bahamas Bowl. But after that, it kind of tanked a little bit, and as it should. But they gave Bobby Wilder, his time to since he was the one that brought them all the way up, unlike some other schools like at Kennesaw State, who we're going to play later this year, and I'll go over that history that week. But, they gave him the opportunity to at least try to build something at that level, and it just didn't work out, and he's always going to be beloved over there, but they had to let him go. They canceled, because of that, they basically canceled their 2020 season in COVID. They just used that as an excuse to kind of rebuild. After they already hired Ricky Rain, who's a former quarterback at Cornell. This is his first ever head coaching job at the college ranks, and they brought him in. And since then, in 4 seasons, they've gone to 2 bowl games, which in standards of we started football in 2009, pretty decent, honestly. And they have yet to win one under Ricky Rain. But like I said, it brings us to 2025. This is going to be considered his best team that they've had yet. And they kick off the year taking on our Indiana Hoosiers, the 17th. What were we ranked? 19? Who cares?
Literally, who cares?
Yeah, they're taking on in Memorial Stadium, Bloomington, Indiana. This Saturday on FS1. They're a 24-point dog to our beloved Hoosiers. The over-under set at 54.5. And like I said, this is the first ever meeting. And I can kind of go into this team a little bit. They bring.
Hold on, can I fill in the gap real quick for Coach Rain?
Yeah,
you mentioned he played quarterback at Cornell. That was from 99 to 01. Began his coaching career coaching running backs under which Big Ten defensive coordinator at Cornell.
At Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Walt. No, he's too young. I'm trying to think. Would it be Jim Knowles?
It would be Jim Knowles.
Nailed it.
He is technically a disciple of the Jim Knowles coaching tree.
Okay, that's a good place to be.
Moved to coach tight ends under Bill Snyder at Kansas State, and then coached quarterbacks for James Franklin at both Vandy and Penn State. So comes with a nice little pedigree. And I really enjoyed his media day appearance. He talked about staff continuity, which is something that I think they lost one guy very similar to Indiana. Talked about roster continuity. They have 4 starters on the offensive line coming back. I'm sure you're about to get into it. The linebackers, 2 really talented players. He is the longest tenured coach in the Sun Belt as well.
Really? That's fascinating. Yeah, good for him. Yeah, just kind of going into Old Dominion and kind of like what their team looks like this year. There's a lot to be excited about. Obviously, they were picked 5th in the media, but Phil Steele's on them in the East and sees them as a dark horse in this conference as general. Like if you're a contender for your division in the Sun Belt, you're a contender for the conference, obviously, right? And they like you said, they bring back 4 out of 5 on the O line. I'm gonna highlight Zachary Barlev, who's gonna be their left tackle. He's a projected all conference guy. In that media, during those media days, and has a lot of hype as well in all the other magazines as well. He's kind of the key in that O line, and will have the responsibility of blocking Mikhail Kamara this weekend. So good luck to him. And so wishing him all the best this week as he tries to put some tape on for NFL scouts, and he has a good opportunity to do that. I'm sure he's chomping at the bit. And and then they're kind of on offense. I'm gonna pause offense. I'm gonna go defense real quick. So they bring back their leading sack leader, Chris Trinidad, on the D line, and they probably have one of the more underrated linebacking groups in the country this year. They have their 3 out of their 4 leading tacklers, all from that linebacking room, all coming back, as well as media day darling projected second team all conference Koa Nautala, who's a true sophomore over there. So he's kind of like their Roe Hardy. So they got 4 deep over there. Where lots of talent, including the return
Noah
of
Tala was their leading tackler last year.
Yes, he was. See, I made a mistake because the reason why that was Jason Henderson returns, and this guy was an All-American 2 years ago, and he returns this year. On top of that group, they're looking to be one of the stronger position groups in that conference in general, regardless of what the position is or anything like that. The ODU linebackers are legit, and it's going to be a big challenge for see how our running backs adjust to that, right? Because it's going to be they're going to be able to fill gaps really well. They're gonna be very disciplined. They're not going to make a ton of mistakes. So it's really up to our game plan and how our guys execute blocking. And maybe it's going to take Hemby and Black stepping up, making an extra juke here and there to get some extra yardage here because they're going to show up ready to play. I will say on the defensive side, lost a lot on the defensive backfield. I think this is an opportunity. I think regardless of what the personnel look like, I would want to see a lot from Fernando Mendoza in this game. But looking at kind of what that personnel looks like, I mean, he should be licking his chops at this group. And, there's just a ton of inexperience. I'm not calling him bad or anything. I remember we played FIU last year, and they had actually a very surprisingly really good defensive backfield. And a lot of those guys were kind of stepping in there for the first time, but they had a couple guys hit the portal and go to big time programs from that FIU team. Who knows? Maybe Old Dominion's going to end up in the same boat, but I see them as very susceptible to our, passing game and what we bring on the outside as well as the not just Fernando Mendoza, but also the talent and our ability to get open with those guys going up mano a mano. So we'll see. I think it's a big opportunity for our offense to get going real quick. I'm going to circle back to the offense because this could end up being a challenge for our defense. And I'll explain why. So we brought in Grant Wilson, who was the week 1 starter at Old Dominion last year. He lost the job. He almost beat South Carolina week 1, 23-19. This is the same team that we're playing this week. They gave South Carolina, a team that went 9-3 last year, a real scare, and they pulled that out with a game-winning drive. And like they were down in the fourth quarter. Like it was a real legit scare for the Gamecocks, and they were able to pull that out with Grant Nelson at quarterback. Grant Wilson. Now he ended up losing the job midway through the year to a freshman by the name of Colton Joseph. And having actually being the only guy I actually watched tape on, this is a guy that is legit dual threat. He had 600 yards rushing with 11 tutties. And then 1,600 with 11 tutties through the air with only 5 picks, a very decent, TD interception ratio. This guy can really break out this year and become one of the top quarterbacks in that conference, if not maybe even become a big-time portal guy going into next year. Obviously, because that's kind of how it goes. You kill it in the group of 5. You're still young, got 2 years of eligibility. Like this is a guy where, Wake Forest or Purdue can come knocking and, if they need a quarterback or something like that, Colton Joseph could be that option, but it all comes down to how he kind of progresses going into year 2. Lots of promise with this guy and could pose a lot of problems. You remember Jack Lausch last year, dual threat guy, was able to make some things happen. Colton Joseph could make some things happen for Old Dominion and give our defense a little bit of a test early on, which is honestly a good thing, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you Old Dominion's going to potentially beat us. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think they're going to give us some legit looks. They're very excited about their weapons around Colton Joseph going into this year, as they aren't necessarily returning starters, but they're guys that they feel very confident about, to the sense where they feel like this is their best team yet, and they're shooting for a Sun Belt championship this year.
Yeah, I would agree. You hit every single note that
no way
I had written down. Oh, I swear, literally down to like the
down to the
linebackers. The only thing you didn't say, and you basically alluded to this with your entire summary of their football team, is that they're going to be ready to play. Like the style of defense they run was giving Carolina fits. That's something Fat Boy's pointing out in the chat. If you go back and look at the score of that game, 23-19, actually, I was with people who were I am friends with people who were at that game, sweating that one out as Carolina season ticket holders, being like, I can't believe Old Dominion's about to ruin our entire weekend. They're going to be ready to play football. And so Indiana is going to have to be ready to play football. But I share your sentiment in that if Indiana executes and does the things they need to do in this football game, it shouldn't be close. And
Yeah,
that's not to disrespect the Old Dominion football program. I think they're going to have a really good year based on pretty much everything you just said.
Yeah, and they're a really chippy team too. They're really scrappy. They went 5-7 last year. I know not great on paper, but when you look at 7 of those losses, or 6 of those 7 losses were by one possession. The only other one being at Virginia by 20, which isn't even, I would even necessarily say, definitely an ass whooping, but not the worst blowout you'll ever see, right? It gives you a lot to be excited about if you're a Monarch fan, where you swing that one possession, 6 of the, like, they could have been a playoff contender last year, if things swing their way, right? If they are able to pull off that South Carolina game, who knows what that season turns out to be. Looks like they just need to turn a corner is really what their biggest thing. They feel like the Nebraska of of the Sun Belt, like just ready to break out. Like, will they? We shall see. And I would argue it's probably easier to break out in the Sun Belt than it is the Big Ten. So good news for Old Dominion.
Very good news for Old Dominion.